Hey y'all, so here for another video. This one is about literary text and informational text. So on the test, you're going to be given passages of some literary texts, and you're going to be basically asked some questions about what you have read and to try to assess how well you've understood what you read. Usually these questions, as I've mentioned before in other videos, are going to be about supporting details and main ideas slash themes, right? So you kind of want to keep these concepts in mind as you're reading the various texts. And as I said in one video, that when we're asking questions about supporting details and main ideas, a lot of time it's really all about how well you're able to connect individual pieces of information together, how well you're able to identify the relationship or describe or characterize the relationship that bonds two pieces or more than two pieces of information together. And there's some natural relationships that pieces of information can kind of take on in regards to one another, such as higher, lower, more, greater, superordinate or subordinate, before, after, cause and effect, premise, conclusion. These kinds of relationships should feel intuitive to you. You should have an intuitive sense of what they're all about, right? So with literary text, again, you're going to be given some passages. One of these is a snidbit of dialogue out of an ancient Greek play, a tragedy written by Sophocles. And you're going to be given some dialogue between two characters, two sisters, Antigone and Ismene, and they're talking about something or another, and you're going to be asked some questions about their character or and stuff like that, right? You're going to be giving another sort of half-baked literary text that's really just a really nice summary of one or two Greek myths. And you're going to be asked some questions about that. You're going to be asked to draw an inference from the text. You're going to be asked to draw an inference from the text, but I'm going to do another video on this concept of inference or inferring, right? So we don't need to really worry about that now, but you do have informational text. You're going to be given some informational text. So what's the difference between literary text and informational text? Take a classic example of a literary text. One that we did in class, right? Dante Alighieri's The Inferno, part one of the Divine Comedy, as we discussed. I mean, this is absolutely not just merely informational, right? I mean, sure, there's tons of information, right? All throughout the book, everywhere, every sentence adds new information. Canto 11 begins, upon the margin of a lofty bank, which great rocks broken in a circle made, we came upon a still more cruel throng. Well, we've just been given more information. Dante and his guide Virgil have come to this other point in space within the layer of the Inferno that they are now within, and they've seen more people, and there's rocks, and he refers to these people with the word throng, and we can already predict that there's going to be some kind of poetic punishment, so some punishment that is a form of poetic justice. So we're given more information. It's very spatial. That information is very spatial and not particularly compelling in any way, and not even really that important. Who would quote that for some great thesis that they're trying to write about some subject matter, right? But this is literary text, as you know, is filled with information, but literary texts also have beautiful form. They have beautiful sound, beautiful shape, and structure, and layers of significance and meaning and language. They take a lot of time. Some books could take years to write, right? It's filled with detail and and character and world building and all these things that involve a lot of imagination, and it's usually dressed up in very beautiful language written in a great style, um, a lot of thoughts and a lot of passion and a lot of beauty goes into the creation of literature. Not saying you couldn't put a lot of thought and beauty into an informational text, but give yourself a classic example of an informational text, like a textbook. Think of any of your textbooks that you have for your classes, whether it's science or econ or literature or whatever it is. These aren't written for the purpose of, they're not poems, they're not novels, they're not plays, they're not short stories, they're not trilogies or epics or anything like that. They just kind of present you with information in the most logical format that the writers can think of to try to get you to be able to internalize and absorb and know and remember this information as speedily and as smoothly as possible. They're not going to try to trick you or make you think one thing when really something else is happening. They're not going to try to confuse you with symbols and poetic turns of phrases, right? The language is going to be straightforward. It's going to give you the information. They're going to structure all the language or all the information in chapters. They're going to organize it all together so that you can flip to it and you can learn from it and you can access it, cite it for whatever your purposes are in class or in school or outside of school. So it's going to be a straightforward presentation of information, where a lot of times literary texts aren't as straightforward, right, with what they're saying. I mean, Dante Alighieri himself said that to really consume this, first one just needs to read it with a literal lens. Just see what happens. Like, what do the characters say? Who do they interact with? What's their movement in time and space? What's going on? What are some of the events? Just kind of get the basics. And then he said you want to reread it again with more symbolism in mind, with the lens, with applying a lens of allegory to it, where you might start seeing that maybe it's communicating something about God or about the soul or about the afterlife or about spiritual matters that take a little sharper perception to really ascertain and to understand, right? But you're going to be asked questions about informational text. And again, it's a lot about main ideas and supporting details. Some of these might be strictly informational, where they just like lay out all this facts and information. And you're going to be asked, what's this basically about? What's the writer saying? Some might be more argumentative in nature, where it's just an explicit, straightforward argument. They're trying to make a point and try to support their point with good reason. And you need to be able to decode that kind of stuff. So you're going to be asked questions about these different kinds of texts. You're going to be given these sorts of texts to read, the kind of thing you've been doing for a long time now in school. And these aren't particularly ultra difficult texts to read. So I think y'all are going to be A-okay.